I had no idea, like, oh, people actually wake up to an alarm clock. Like for me, all my life was like living in a bubble. And now I was suddenly at 23 years old, dropped into the real world. And
my name is Paul Harvey, and this is Life, Passion and Business. We're about helping you explore, finding your passion for life and the work that you do. But it's so much more than that. It's about finding clues to the big life questions. What does it mean to be successful? What is the meaning of life? If you're looking for more, then join me on this journey where together we will discover through interviews, tools and tips how to live life full of meaning, passion and purpose. So how is your fear of failure? Once children get beyond the baby stage and they start to explore, we begin to see their unstoppable determination to engage in the world around them. For those floundering, self-conscious moments, they gain control of their bodies and their limbs, and they learn to crawl, eventually walk and run. There may be cries of frustration, but there is no fear of failure. No matter how many times a child falls, they always get up and try again. So fast forward to adulthood, and for many, it's a different picture. Somewhere along the way, we learn to say, I can't. I tried that and I failed. I'm not doing that, I might fail. It will hurt. People will laugh, and fill the blank. You see, there is something really strange about how, as human beings, we suddenly develop this terrible fear of failing. So where does that determination go? How do we get so caught up severely in the fear of failure? So much so for some people that we would rather endure discomfort than step out and take a risk. More importantly, what does it take to find that get up and go and to overcome that fear? It's often said that the rewards are on the other side of fear, but the fear of failure stops us crossing that boundary. I heard it said somewhere that Thomas Edison was afraid of the dark, so he invented the light bulb. And it was a challenge, and there were many setbacks. And apparently he said at some point, I have not failed, I just found 2,000 ways that light bulbs don't work. Fear of failure is a huge issue in the world of business and personal development. That is why I was delighted to meet and interview my guest, Miha Matlievski, because he is a failure coach. He went from running a successful business, in fact successful businesses, and having a personal net worth of over $15 million. And over one weekend he went to $5 million in debt, literally overnight. He eventually reached the point where he was ready to take his own life, and it took courage and resilience for Miha to climb back over the balcony from feeling like a failure to learn from his experience and empower others to develop a healthy relationship with failing. And that's how he became the fail coach. Welcome to Life, Passion and Business. And today I'm delighted to have a gentleman on the phone with me who is a failure coach. And his name is Miha Matlievski. So welcome to the program. Thank you for taking the time out to be with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
So what is amazing about Mihail is he is a failure coach. Now that's going to have to be unpacked, isn't it? We're going to have to hear about that one. So look, this is Life, Passion and Business. The story we like to hear here is this idea of passion, how you got there, and the journey that you're doing on this life, and how you're doing it, why you're doing it. So what's the story? How did you get to where you are now?
Well, how much time do I have?
Well, we have enough time to make this happen, but I guess if we can get the whole thing done within an hour, everyone's happy.
Okay. No, I mean, I'll try to just do a quick version, and then you jump in.
We can unpack. We can unpack as we go, can't we?
Yeah.
So obviously, where are you from? Because obviously you're not from the US, and you're certainly not from my part of the world. I'm in Scotland.
No, no, no. I'm originally from Slovenia.
Ah.
My father was Macedonian.
Hmm.
And now, for the past 2.5 years, I live in another country, which is called Serbia.
Yeah.
And I might move next year again, but that's still a
They're all
secret.
related, aren't they? Those countries, although not always,
Yes,
not always happily, but they're all related, aren't they?
yeah, unfortunately, not always happily, but yeah, it was all part of the ex-Yugoslavia.
Mm. Yes, of course it was.
Yeah. So if I dive into the story,
Yeah,
so
do please do.
the story, and this is very important part, is that I had a tremendously happy childhood.
Mm.
Like the perfect childhood any child can dream about. We were living together with my grandparents, so four people, constantly taking care of anything that I wanted. I never had to work for anything. Even, the house cleaning, my mom would just send me and dad to the zoo while, she's alone at home cleaning the house. Why I'm telling this is because it has a big meaning a bit later on in the story. And then when I was in my high school, I dropped out of high school in my third year. And I just decided to, go the entrepreneurial route. I started my entrepreneurial journey alongside my father in his company. And for the first few years, I was more or less just son by occupation, like just winging it, living it. Big paycheck, nothing much to do, and just enjoying the life. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end. And at a quite young age, when I was 23, my father suddenly got pancreatic cancer. And 3 weeks later, bam, he was gone. I
Wow,
was
that was
the only
fast.
child. Yeah. My mom was, just a bank clerk. And it was only normal that I take over the family business. But as I mentioned before, I wasn't really doing much in it before, so I had no clue how to run a business, how to do the finances, things like that. But what I did enjoy was, networking. I always loved the psychology, the sales, things like that. But other than that, I sucked at everything else. And now this is where, that whole story of the perfect childhood comes slowly into the picture, is because I was dropped into the real life. I had no idea, like, oh, people actually wake up to an alarm clock. Like, for me, all my life was like living in a bubble. And now I was suddenly at 23 years old, dropped into the real world. And you know often with my clients, they come from different kinds of adversity, abuse, or this or that. But I was as handicapped as they might be with their adversity. So it was just a different type of adversity, learning how to, change the light bulb, how to, like, things that are completely normal to everybody else were things that I was learning for the first time at the age of 23 and 24.
And
And
wealthy people
another,
have the same trouble, can't they? But people come from great
yeah,
wealth can have the same struggle. They don't recognize that a washing machine, how it works and that sort of stuff. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And then the second thing was, but this one will be applicable a little bit later on in the story, was that, I was always told by everybody how amazing I am, how good I am, how super genius I am, like, all those super, super things. And one thing that I learned later on was that I'm not that freaking special. And that I'm not just to be blamed when good things happen, because that's normal, because I'm so good. And whenever I was faced with some failure, I blamed it on somebody else, because in my mind it was unconceivable, like, how can I fail if I'm this wonder kid?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So to continue with the story, I took over the company. Soon we had tremendous problems, but I was lucky to find people who wanted to invest in the company. They saw something in me, in the business I was running, and they took over the whole CEO leadership thing. And I was back to, sales and stuff like that I enjoyed, that I loved. Things were picking up, but I didn't learn the lessons. And not long moving forward, I started being creative, and I had this whole ideas of new businesses. And I just started creating company after company after company. And I ended up with 4 companies, and they were all doing good. And it was not because I was so good. At that time, that was 2006 to 2008, in Europe, everything was blossoming. I mean, I don't know how it was, in the UK part of the world, but here in Eastern Europe, like, you were walking down the street and the bank was throwing money at you. Like, it was that good.
That was before the crash, wasn't it? Before the crash,
yes,
and the internet was just starting to make things really cook. So that's what was going on, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so, me thinking that I'm, the King Midas, and everything I touch turns into gold, and I can do no wrong, and I'm so amazing. I became like overly cocky, overly self-confident. And then, people invite you to a cigar club, President Cigar Club, and Rotary Club, and Lions Club, and all of that. And, you feel, oh, I'm so important. And I have these amazing friendships with, people who are also the A-listers in our country and all of that. And then the financial crush came, and it started in 2008 in the US, and then it slowly came to Eastern Europe in the fall of 2009, and that's where all those little mistakes, all those failures came crushing on me. And then one day, it was December 7th, 2009, Monday morning, I got a call from the bank. One of my companies was doing this huge real estate project, and we were right in the middle of it. But the prices dropped so much that the price at which I would sell the square meter would be lower than the price I was building the square meter for. And the bank said, we are done. We want our money back. And because I went into all of this very childish, and I just put everything on the line for it. By the way, at that time, my personal net worth was around 15 million US. I mean, I calculated everything into the US because most of my clients now are in the US, and the audience as well. So around 15 million US, and then Tuesday, when they start taking everything, all my companies bankrupted. I wasn't able to pay salaries, taxes, nothing. Like, everything was gone, and I was faced with $5 million personal debt.
Ouch.
And also, because I wasn't able to pay the employees and the taxes, you can't do personal bankruptcy. So that's when, the whole story starts, or the second part of the story. And the thing was, I first went into huge depression, anxiety, calls every single day from debtors. And those weren't the calls, like, oh, I'm going to sue you. It was more like mafia calls, Yeah. So a few months later, I was very much thinking about suicide. And then one night, I was actually climbing already on the other side of the balcony. I was on the other side of the balcony. And I think I was probably, 15 or 30 seconds away from really jumping. The thing that was on my mind was, will I do this correctly, or will I end up on a wheelchair? That was what was going through my mind there. And then as I was getting ready, it was for the first time when I said this to myself, and out loud, it was, you F failed. I don't know if I can say the F word on your podcast, but you F failed. So yeah, let's keep it at that. And it was hearing myself say the word you. You know how they say when you're about to die, when you're like, that film starts in your head and you go through, moments. And it was almost like that film. I went back and I was like, oh my God, I made that decision. I hired that person. I partnered with those. I bought that land. I decided to go into that project. I decided to skip and not hire lawyers for this document, or tax advisors for this and that. And suddenly, for me, that was so empowering, because my next thought was, with all the mistakes and all the stupid decisions and stupid things that I did along this journey, I was still able to, gather 15 million US in personal net worth. Now, if I learn from this, if I make better decisions, if I do better due diligence, and so on, I can make something even bigger. And that was the moment when there was again light on the other side of the tunnel. I mean, I knew it's going to be a long tunnel because there was so much of what I had to, I literally had to rebuild myself from ground up and really become a whole different person. But yeah, I climbed back in. I made a huge list of everything I need to learn and change and habits and all of that. And then the first thing I did in the morning was I started calling the debtors before they called me. And I was like, if killing me will solve your problems and you're okay with that, then let's do it now. Because continuing this way where you call me every day and I'm depressed all day long will not get us anywhere. I don't owe you guys, 2K, 3K, 5K, and I can just get a job and repay everybody in 3 months. I owe $5 million and I have to create something huge to be able to repay that. And so if that's okay with you, let's make a deal. I'll call you once a month, give you an update, but in between, I need my peace, I need my quiet, and I just need to work on stuff. And they all agreed. Some later on even opened some doors, not too much, but a little bit, which was, nice to see. But I guess they all realized, like, I'd rather have my money back than, kill somebody. I don't know. And so the journey started of me rebuilding myself. And it first started with personal development because, it all starts within you, the entrepreneur. And then once you work through that, then you can start working on your business, and then the business development, learning and all of that came in. And then in 2014, I've created a new startup. I was able to take all those lessons and scale that from 0 to multiple 8 figures a month in less than a year.
Wow.
Which I'm still one of the quite not so many founders of startups who was able to scale so fast in their first year. And then we scaled to 9 figures in next year. And then
what were you selling in that project? That's one hell of a scale.
It's energy efficiency, which meant helping big corporations to save on electricity and gas. And, like our smallest client was spending over 100 million a year just for the electricity. And then when you help them save 40% or 30%, and our business model was that we invested in everything and then we were sharing the savings half. You can quickly go to those big numbers. So yeah, not everything is scalable. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure, if I would have a copywriting business, I wouldn't be able to go from 0 to 8 figures in a year. So yeah, I mean,
there has to be some big revenue somewhere, doesn't there, to make these things?
Yeah.
You hear a lot on the
internet,
online. Oh, I have scalable business with high net worth clients. It's like, yeah, but there are only so many of those. But when you're talking about companies spending that sort of money.
Yeah, I mean, I always make sure to add that part so that people understand like what was the business model and all of that and why I was able to do that. And then I had a successful exit, a Fortune 100 company that was actually our competitor did a technology takeover because we were doing certain things in a very unique way and nobody else was doing that in those ways. So I was able to repay, and it ended up being about 7 million, with, interest and lawsuits and all of that. And then I went on a hugely long vacation. I came back home and I was like, what do I do now with my life? I have the freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of choice. My first thought was to just travel the world and eat and try as many burgers as possible and craft beer. but then that didn't sound too healthy. And it was at that moment where I realized that
it would be a short dream, that one, wouldn't it?
yeah,
A short dream to the ER, wouldn't it? Really, that one.
Yeah. But it was at that time that I really realized that, like all my adult life, I was in a way an entrepreneur, and that it's not just what I do, but it became who I am. Like I'm the entrepreneur deep down, and for me to go to a local pub and talk about the weather or something like that just doesn't excite me. It bores me. And what I love doing is mingling and networking and masterminding and brainstorming with fellow entrepreneurs and so on. And so I just went to the first local startup incubator, and I volunteered to just help local startups. And from that, everything evolved into more and more companies calling me, asking me for advice and help and so on. And then a bit further down the line, I remember I was having a beer with a friend, and I was like, like, okay, I now had my vacation. So like, what should I start? What should I do? Like it kind of was like, oh, I need to start another company. And he was like, dude, like you already like love doing what you're doing. You love helping people. Why wouldn't you do that? Like for real. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, that really makes sense. And then the next thing was, okay, so how do I name it? Like success coach or, this and that, what people like to hear. But he was, like every time you start a story, it's always, I tried this and then I failed. And these were the lessons that I've learned. Said, like, why wouldn't you be the fail coach? I went online, I checked it out. It was available, the domain name and all of that. And I fell in love with it. And I never looked back since. And, often people ask me like fail coach, like, oh, is this just a PR, spin on something or just a conversation starter? But it goes much deeper. And the way I like to explain it is, if you want to accomplish anything, so not just being an entrepreneur and creating a successful and sustainable business, but even if you're an athlete and you want a good career and be successful and win Olympic medals and so on, you always have to push yourself out of the comfort zone. I mean, nothing good will happen in the comfort zone. And whenever you're doing things outside, it means that you're doing them for the first, second, third time. I mean, after you've done it for 100 times, it becomes part of your comfort zone. And so when you're doing things for the first, second time, there's 50-50 chance that you will fail or succeed at that particular thing that you're doing. And more likely it is that you will fail. Any entrepreneur that you can talk with, they will all tell you that they had much more failures along the journey than successes, but you have to push past them. And it's really all about developing healthy emotional relationship with failure that matters the most. And it goes, like fail fast, fail forward, but you can't fail fast if your emotions, negative self-talk stops you and puts you in that roller coaster, or a downward spiral. So you really need to do it in proper way so that you can fail fast and fail forward. And yes, of course, I help entrepreneurs with, how to succeed as well. And, business development, laying down the foundation, exiting, scaling, all of that. But the first thing that we always need to tackle is, to lay down that foundation in the entrepreneur. And big part of that foundation is how to develop healthy relationship with failure.
It's fascinating because my wife discovered Brené Brown a few weeks ago, and she's a speaker in the States, but she talks a lot about being vulnerable, the ability to be vulnerable. And that's it. It's about once you discover that you can be vulnerable, you give yourself permission to fail. And she works with entrepreneurs on this thing that, oh, we don't want to be vulnerable. She said, but you need to learn to fail. How are you gonna fail without being there? Oh, I'm not so sure. I like the idea of that, but it is that ability. It's that thing to be able to go, okay, that hurts. Now what?
Yeah. The way I often say it, and I even made, like, just a few months ago, I made a Facebook Live on that topic. And it was like, when you reach the point where you're able to strip naked, so just, tell it as it is without, leaving the sucky part out and just talking about the successes and all of that. But when you're able to tell the full story, when you're able to show yourself, expose yourself with the pluses and the minuses, that's when, the magic really starts happening.
Absolutely. So I think I know the answer. So, I have a structure for this podcast. As you know, the questions are about passion. Clearly, you are passionate about business and passionate about helping people succeed. Okay, sorry to interrupt. I've not done a mid-roll in the middle of a podcast for ages, but I just wanted to ask you something. How are your plans for 2020 going? If they're doing well, fine, carry on with the program. If not, make sure you stick to the end, because there's an offer at the end that might help you get some things sorted. Anyway, let's get back to Miha. What a great story.
Well, yes. I mean, I'm super, super passionate. And all of my clients tell me that, like, with you, we really have that feeling that you actually care, about us and the results and so on. And for the first time, we're not just feeling like just a number. So yes, I am super passionate about that. Like, even in my business and for me personally, giving value, or the motto that I go by personally is, don't be a man of success, be a man of value. So that's really something that I live by every single day.
Yeah.
But I'm even more passionate, and I think that's kind of like my purpose, is really to be the one who gets the conversation started to the point where we will break the taboo called failure. Because we can only do it if we speak about it, but not on the superficial level, but when we dive deep, when we go into emotions, inner monologues, things like that, when we really open our hearts and souls, I think that's when, the healing starts for many. And that's how we can, make the change in this world. So that's what's beyond, just helping entrepreneurs, is, to really break that taboo called failure. And then the second thing is that along my journey, there was one special, well, not a person. It was, I mean, I adopted a dog from a shelter, and his name is Happy. And
is that the one behind you on the wall?
No, that's the second one. That's
for the benefit of my listeners, I'm looking at an amazing picture of a dog behind, but there we go.
Yeah. Now I have 4 dogs,
Okay.
but yeah, he was always there. And in those times of depression, I still had to, go out with him. And it was how I still stayed in touch with people. Otherwise, without him, I would just, close myself in the apartment and never go out and things like that. So he really, people often say, oh, how nice, you saved him. But he really saved me.
That is so true. That is so true. I have a friend who's a writer, and she's at the moment writing a book about the human relationship with animals. And we think we look after animals, but actual fact, you're right, they look after us.
Yeah, like he is my guardian angel,
Yeah.
or I don't know how to say it. So I have this deep passion for animals, especially for dogs. And that's the reason why 2.5 years ago I moved to Serbia, because the problem here with stray dogs is still very big. And so when I'm not coaching, when I'm not helping entrepreneurs, you will most likely see me running around streets and finding stray dogs, trying to lure them to, with some food, and then taking them to the vet, giving them shelter, finding them families all over Europe. Some even go to US, to Canada. So yeah, in the past 2.5 years, I would say I saved probably around 80 to 90 dogs already.
Wow.
And that's the second passion. So I'm torn between, or not torn, but it's like these 2 things. It's not just one, it's 2 things.
Mm-hmm. So look, the question I need to ask, but I think I already know the answer, is what is your success model? Because you've had the big businesses of success, but that clearly wasn't success for you. So what is success?
To really be aligned with, that saying, know thyself.
Oh, yes.
So you first have to really dive deep. And that story of mine got me to the point where I really had to dive deep and challenge everything I knew about myself and really figure out who I am, what I stand for, what are my core values, core beliefs, goals
Yeah,
in
I was
life,
going to
and
ask you
so
about
on.
values. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your core values?
It's being the man of value. So that's the first one. And then it's walk your talk, integrity, freedom of choice, having the freedom of choice. And then another one that I live by as well is that every day should be a journey of happiness, not just chasing happiness and living the life of struggles. And being grateful, that's a very important one. And also staying humble. To always stay humble. That's something that I have a few reminders on my phone to every day in the morning remind me of those principles on which I live by. That's just wonderful. So that, if I would switch on the autopilot, there's the reset button. That's the reminder, just in case, because, it's so easy to, now that I have this amazing life and I live a very full and happy life. And the source of happiness for me is just the giving. I don't need much. I had all of it. I had, crazy restaurants, Michelin star restaurants. I had the traveling. I had the cars. I had all of that. But I was so empty on the inside. And now I don't have too much on the outside, but my heart is so full and so fulfilled with that happiness and gratitude. And I can't imagine living a happier life, to be honest.
I had an image pass my Facebook feed today, which I actually shared, and it said something like, the older I get, I realize the greatest gifts I want are things that can't be bought.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy for the lessons from the past, because otherwise I would never learn, and I would probably be one of those people, I want a new car, I want this, I want that. I guess you have to try it for yourself to really see. And I'm not saying that money is a bad thing. It was how I was using that money.
No,
and
it's
I'm
a
not
tool,
saying
isn't it?
that material stuff is a bad thing. It was, again, how I was using it, how I was, experiencing all of that. That was wrong. My mentality was wrong. My values were wrong, and so on. So it was not, the material stuff that's bad. No, I'm not saying that. It was just how I was experiencing that, how I was using that, how I was behaving, and how unaligned I was living according to, who I really am. So the first thing was to really get to know myself, and then really just living aligned with who you truly are. And don't make compromises with that. I mean, I was a man of 1,000 faces. I was constantly wearing masks. I was constantly using lies and all of that. And, at one point I realized that the person I was hurting the most by doing that was myself, because I wasn't living according to who I am. And that was another thing that emptied me. And so at one point, it was in 2013. So after the failures, after I already did a lot of self-development and so on, at one point I was like, okay, enough was enough. From now on, I will only speak the truth. And from now on, I will not show any masks. I will be who I am. Sometimes crazy, sometimes funny, sometimes sad, sometimes I don't know what. And, there's 8 billion or almost 8 billion people out there. And if I can't find a few people to hang around with who will love me and appreciate me for who I am and all of that, well, then it's just, better I will just have my dogs, and I will be that cat lady, just a man with dogs instead of cats. You know, so that was kind of like a decision I made, that, you know, from this moment on, this is how things will go, and I'm staying true to that. And the more I'm staying true to that, the happier I am.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. That sounds brilliant. It's interesting you talk about the gratitude thing, because I heard of a concept this week, which I had heard but never put this way, about the idea of radical gratitude, which is basically being thankful for the crap that happens in your life, because it gives you the opportunity to discover more about yourself.
Once you develop healthy relationship with failure, you take it for what it is. It's I mean, you know, often people ask me, so Miha, now that you're the fail coach and all of that, you don't fail. I said, no, I fail even more. I'm scared if I don't fail, because that means that I'm slacking off. I'm staying in my comfort zone. I always am still pushing the boundaries, and I'm going for bigger, more impact, for, you know, getting on stages to talk about the failure, to reach even more people. And if I don't fail for a few days, I'm worried.
You're inspiring me to fail more, I have to say.
And you know, like, you become grateful for that. I'm grateful for, I remember a few years ago, I was on a stage, and somebody asked me after I told the story, like, oh, what would you say to your, you know, 10 years younger you if you could go back in time? And you know, my mind started racing, and I was like, okay, so I would say, don't go into that business, or don't sign this deal. And then I was, well, if I can go back in time, I would just say to myself, like, take a loan and buy Apple shares, or, you know, take a loan and buy Bitcoin when it comes out. But then something strange happened, and it hit me, you know, like, I don't know, probably a flashback to some of those movies, you know, where they change something and then everything changes. And I was like, oh my God, like, even a small thing could change the whole trajectory, and I wouldn't be today who I am.
Well, you wouldn't be on the stage, would you? You wouldn't have been on that stage talking.
And I really love who I became. I really love, you know, like, how the values that I'm living, and all of that, and the impact that I'm making and sharing with others. And then what I said out loud was, I wouldn't change a single thing, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I still strongly believe that. And yes, often people say that, how can you be grateful for, you know, those troubled times? But, you know, I learned the lessons. I really did. And once you learn the lessons, you become grateful for the lessons.
It's a fantastic story of yours, and I love the humility that you put into it and how you bring that across. And as I just said to you, you're inspiring me to fail more. So I need to look at how I can do a lot more failure in my life. So here's the question that I ask everybody, which is an open question: is what's the one question that I haven't asked you?
Oh, I mean, there's plenty of questions, you know, like, we could go into, I don't know, it depends what you think would be most valuable. Like, when I do these interviews, and I do lately quite plenty of them, I'm not somebody who wants to just, you know, be salesy. I mean, I hate that. What I want to bring to the table is as much value for your audience as possible. So,
but it's open to you. Is it what is it that you think people need to know?
If they're entrepreneurs, then one thing is definitely, you know, learn how to have healthy relationship with failure. That will be a big thing, because fear of failure is the number one reason for, you know, killing the dreams.
If there was a 5-step process for getting there, or what you know, what's the process? How do I starting from?
You actually fight it with logic, and you actually have to flip your focus from the goal to the process leading towards that goal. And actually, numbers, KPIs, benchmarking helps you to see the numbers. With numbers, there are no emotions. They're very clear. And benchmarking is the key, where you compare those numbers to, I don't know, industry averages, to your competition, to your future results, and so on. So it's a bit technical way how you really can solve that. And the more you do that foundation with processes, KPIs, benchmarking, the easier it is for you to fail. Because often the problem is that, we don't have any logical way of thinking, and we are feeling, I feel what I do on Facebook is bringing me results. Well, if I can show that with the numbers, then I can be much more certain. And that certainty, that clarity eliminates the emotions. And when you eliminate the emotions, you can see more clearly what's working, what's not. And then you can make fast, quick decisions. And so the failures are much lesser, and you go towards successes much faster. So it's really, it's a process where you have to flip the way you look at the business, the way you make decisions. A very important part is practicing emotional intelligence, because, emotional intelligence will, guide you when to use emotions, where to use logic. Often entrepreneurs use logic when they should emotions, and emotions where they should use logic. Mindfulness is an amazing thing, because it lets you not react on the autopilot. Something happens and usually we just react. But if you practice mindfulness, you can actually step one step back and say, okay, now what can I bring from the past? Maybe I was already in a similar situation. How did I react back then? Was it good? Was it not? Okay, can I try something new this time? How can I measure the results, and so on? So it's not a thing that you can just pick from today to tomorrow. It's a process, because more soft skills are needed, and soft skills are harder to learn, and they take practicing to really hone on them. Hard skills are easy. You study a book and bam, tomorrow you can apply that learning. Soft skills are much harder. So it's not a thing where you can, do things from today to tomorrow, but you can make a decision and you can go for that. And then, with a lot of my clients, we implement a really simple technique that really just resets you every half an hour. And you just take your phone, you go into your reminders app, and whatever you want those reminders to be, whatever you feel you need, is it be mindful, is it be grateful, is it watch the cash flow, and so on. And you just create reminders that go off every half an hour, and it's really just a reset. When the reminder goes off, all you have to do is just reflect on the past half an hour. Was I mindful? Well, not so much. I was quite a lot on autopilot. Okay, I'll try to do better in the next half an hour. Yeah. And then, you're mindful for 4 minutes, and you switch on the autopilot. But in a few weeks' time, you can go throughout the day being quite mindful.
And what happens is these new habits get become ingrained, and you do it for 30 days, and suddenly you've shifted your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a process. It's not, a thing that you just do overnight, but yes, there's a lot that can be done. So the failure would be one thing. And then the second thing would be do the homework first, like do some business development, put something on the paper. So many entrepreneurs just go out there and they wing it. And I mean, nothing wrong with winging it, but you have to be mentally insanely stable to overcome everything that's thrown at you if you just wing it. And, you are burning through the resources because you are everywhere, because you have no solid base on what to make decisions. So you go on 10 social media platforms, and you do this and that, and you're just burning through your resources, and it's so much harder to create the momentum and that hockey stick effect.
Yes, so I always say let's start with one social media platform and make that really work for us. Yeah, I have to say, most clients go, no, but I should be here, I should be there, and I should be. I go, yeah, okay, but we need to get one of them working well.
Yeah. And then the third thing would be take care of the foundation and always go back to foundation whenever you want to go one step further. I'll explain this the way I usually explain it with house building. You know, like when, let's say you decided to build a small family house, and you know, for a small family house, you just make the basic foundation. It's nothing big, you know. But then a few years later, you say, well, you know what? I'm gonna use this space and I'm gonna build higher. I want to build a skyscraper. Well, what's the first thing you have to do? You have to go back to the foundation, make it stronger, larger, bigger, so that, you know, it can actually hold that new structure in place. So, you know, if you're building foundation for a 5-figure business, it's one thing. If 6-figure business, it's a little bit stronger foundation, and 7 again stronger. So it's always back and forth between doing, growing, scaling, or whatever you want to use the terms, and going back to foundation. So that foundation is really, really, really so important. And, you know, foundation is processes, KPIs, benchmarking, HR structure, company structure, a brand story, values, mission, vision, company culture, what do we stand for, what do we stand against, and so on. So those are the things that all go into the foundation. And yeah, first build a solid foundation. And, you know, like, okay, me with my now past experience and knowledge, because, you know, in all these past 23 years, I've built altogether 10 companies. I mean, this one is the 10th, and all of them went past 7 figures, some even past 8, some even past 9. So I do have now some experience. So I can even from start build a foundation to go to 8 figures. You know, so you just prepare the foundation. So that's how you can then scale super fast. But, you know, you have to already have the foundation there for your target. Otherwise, you can't scale to that target because you will be stopped in the middle because of the foundation. So those would be, I would say, 3 things that I think are super valuable for anybody who is either thinking about entrepreneurship, already an entrepreneur, even a seasoned entrepreneur. I mean, I had quite a few clients in the past who were 8, 9 figure, even 1 10-figure entrepreneur. And when they plateau at something, that was a clear sign that we have to go back to the basic, back to the foundation. Every single time, even when they are at 9 or 10 figures, you have to go back there if the growth or the scaling is not happening.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, this is a lovely conversation, but I also recognize it needs to be drawn to a close at some point.
Yes.
So, you know, if people want to get in touch with you, what kind of people are you looking to talk to?
Like I said, I just love helping entrepreneurs. Not that I hate other people, but, you know, it's just, for me, it's hard to talk with athletes because I never was one. No. I don't know their language. They don't speak my language. So yeah. I love helping and working with and talking with entrepreneurs. And I would say that the best way, if they have some struggles, they want to, you know, develop their healthy relationship with failure. Like every week, I have 2 schedules a week where I open my Zoom and people can just jump in, and it's free of charge. And we just, you know, together brainstorm, and I hold them accountable, and they can just do that by week by week by week. They can get to know me. I give them specific advice. So it's nothing pre-recorded. I don't record it because I want to create a safe space for them where they can ask anything they want. So I'm not using that for any marketing or anything. And it's really purely value based, where I just love helping. But, you know, it's hard for me to do all of that one-on-one. And so I've created this where, and if they want to see what my schedule is like, and when the next brainstorming pick my brain session will be, they can just go to frameworkforfreedom.me. It will take them into my chatbot. and then, you know, they have all the schedules in there and everything, and they don't have to worry. I hate spam probably more than anybody else. And so I make sure that we are spam free in our business. So if like, for me, if I don't believe that whatever I'm putting out will not bring value, I don't do it. So they don't have to be afraid that they will start getting gazillion messages from me. It's really just for them to stay in touch, and just so that they have always access to my calendar, because, you know, I play around with times and days and so on, just to make it, you know, accessible to the Australians, to the Americans, to Europeans. So I mix and match those times. But yeah, I just open my Zoom client, they jump in, and we get down with whatever they are struggling with.
I shall put those links on the podcast so they can get to that. No problem at all. That's a very generous offer of you. I think that's fantastic that you do that.
Well, so that's, I would say that's the best way to get in touch with me, to say hi, to see what I'm all about, and so on.
That's lovely. So we are at the last question on this podcast, which is the one question that I ask all of my guests. And I guess it was the reason I started this podcast, because it was the one question that I had reached this point in my life where I wanted an answer to this myself. And I had several answers, but I wasn't sure what was the right one. So look, we're born on this earth, we're animals, and only humans are arrogant enough to think we have a purpose here. So for you, what is the purpose or the meaning of life? Why are we here?
Well, my way of thinking is that you don't find your purpose, but your purpose finds you. Uh-huh. And usually it finds you when you are at peace. You know, and some people are happy that they find their purpose at the age of 8 years, and all their life, then they play the violin and they're living their purpose. And for some, it happens later on. My purpose found me when I was, I think, 37 or 38. So quite late. But, you know, I think once you have to go the full circle. You first have to have the freedom of money. Then you need to have the freedom of time. And when you have those two, you have the freedom of choice. And usually in the beginning, you do all the crazy stuff that, you know, you were not doing before. But then after a while, life becomes boring. And that's when I think you really connect with what it is that you truly came to this life for. And that's when your purpose finds you. And for me, like I said, it's this helping entrepreneurs and to just all around doing this whole failure thing. But I don't believe that you find your purpose. I believe that when you least expect, when you are, you know, calm and at ease and in that good spot, that's when, but you have to get there. You have to go through struggles, through failures, through all of that. I don't know. Do I have a time for a quick joke that's very related to this?
Of course you have a time. You have the time.
Okay. So at least here in Eastern Europe, there is a joke that I don't know how I would say, but the guy is called Miha. That's a very typical name. So he's sitting and catching fish with, you know, just the one pole. And a German businessman comes along and says, well, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm catching fish. I need to catch one fish every day to feed the family. And then I go back home. And the businessman says, well, how much time does it take you? Well, usually it's like 2 hours. But he says, you know, day has many more hours. Why don't you sit a little bit longer, catch more fish so you can have one for the family, and then you can sell the rest and buy more poles. And you know, then the conversation goes on, and then, you know, you have more poles, you catch even more, you sell more, you buy a fishing boat, and then you buy a whole fleet of fishing boats and so on. And then Miha at one point says, you know, like, but why would I do that? And he says, well, so that you would be happy, you know, like you would be able to just relax and enjoy the life. And Miha looks at him and says, like, I'm already doing that. But I think, you know, like, that's the joke, but I think in reality for us, we need to go to that full circle to really come back to the basics and to really learn through our life experience what who we are, what do we stand for, what are our values, what are our core beliefs, and what is important for us, what fulfills us, what makes us happy. But you have to go that route. I think maybe a few people find it without that, but somebody also wins the jackpot, so they're lucky that they can find that without going the full circle. But for majority of us, I think you have to do the journey to then realize what is life brought you here for.
Yeah. I did a Facebook Live on the Life, Passion and Business channel the other day about that, about mission. Because it occurred to me recently is that we all have this mission. We are born and we die, and it's the journey from one end to the other of our life. And we're all looking at these stories and watching people do these things. But we're on a mission too. We're on a quest. We're on the quest of our own life, and it's how we choose to live it. And you can live it quietly and do nothing with it, or you can live it great and do amazing things with it. But again, it's our choice.
Absolutely. It's always our choice.
Yeah. So on that note, I will leave us there. So thank you very much, Miha, for this day. It's been a fantastic conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It was really a pleasure to be here, to be your guest, and to have this conversation with you. And I truly do hope that, at least somebody will find this valuable. And if we helped even one person to develop healthy relationship with failure and, find success, I think my mission for today was done.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. All the best. And that was Life, Passion and Business with Paul Harvey and my guest, Miha Matlievski. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And what an amazing journey to come from that level of despair and danger, and to turn it around in such a short space of time. If you would like to get in touch with Miha, you can find him on Facebook as the Fail Coach. He's on LinkedIn as Miha Matlievski, and you can find him on Twitter as fail_coach. Now, all of those links will be on the website underneath the podcast player as per usual. As you will have heard on the program, Miha is very generous with his time, and if you want to get in touch with him, I'm sure he'd be delighted to speak to you. He runs various events and I think open kind of Zoom sessions. So if you've got something to talk about, Miha's the man. So here we are at the end of 2020, and how are your plans shaping up? Are you getting done what you want to get done? See, that's the thing about life, isn't it? We set these plans and goals during the festive season, during that downtime, and it's wonderful. It's a time to evaluate, to look at where you've been for the year, and to think about planning and doing things in the new year. And the sad fact is that most New Year's resolutions are done, ended by the 15th of January. And the reason that's the case is because people haven't really set the foundations in place. They haven't really worked out what they are going to do, what they're going to drop. Because if you say yes to one thing, you've got to say no to something else. And that's the point. That's what makes getting stuff done so difficult when you're just trying to do more and more and more. The other factor, which is a key aspect about getting stuff done, is accountability. What holds your accountability? Is it you? Is it your family? Is it someone else? Something, and well, at the end of the day, you have to be accountable. Only we can be accountable. But sometimes we need someone else to hold it for us, or literally observe us, watch us, so that we stick to what we say we're going to do. And I have a process for this. Now, it's called turbo coaching. It's a technique that I learned in my coach training some 12 years ago, and I've been using it with clients ever since. It's a 20-minute process, and it starts off by saying, okay, what do you want to achieve? And then we look at why you're not achieving it, or the blocks around that achievement. And then we look at resources and things you're going to bring to that process. that you could do to get around those blocks, and then we look at accountability in terms of the time frame that you're going to choose to do it. And the whole thing happens within 20 minutes. It really is an amazing process because it's so fast, and it's that speed that kind of forces it to happen in a way, and you come away from it with an accountability kind of like, well, we're going to get this done. It just happens. If you'd like to explore that, go to the podcast website and you will find the link for Turbo Coaching. And if you enter the discount code first call in uppercase, you will get the first session completely free of charge. So I encourage you, go and find out, go to the website and let's get this done, because that's what we're about, getting things done, making things happen. That's it for this week and we are done. I will be back in a couple of days with a short cast. I have a few of those stacked. And I've also got some amazing plans coming up for an event sometime at the end of February. But I'll let you know more about that as those plans evolve. And as always, thank you for your time and attention. I'll catch you later. All the best.